Three, the just over 2-day push to make Kamala Harris the Democrats' unanimous nominee for president has now been completed, all except for the blessing of Barack Obama. But that will likely come to in Chicago. In all, it took only 31 hours for Joe Biden to issue what basically amounted to an email, giving up his run for president and a second term, and Kamala Harris become the presumptive nominee by grabbing enough delegates to win on the first ballot. They call this democracy. Nobody voted for Kamala Harris to be president. Nobody. Every other major Democrat except Obama now in line, though. They claiming this process to coordinate Harris was open and fair. And it was by Democrat standards, which is true because they don't really have standards, just objectives and agendas, so they're par for the course. Some things will never change. Say one thing, do another. Democrats scream about democracy about as often as they accuse Trump and his supporters of being racist, and they're now dumping democracy altogether, not allowing any challenge to Harris at all, and claiming it was an honest contest. Ha! Newsflash, it was all rigged again. It's all they know how to do. I mean, they railroaded Bernie back in 2016. They forced Mayor Pete, Amy Klobuchar, and others out of the way to make Biden the candidate in 20, and they totally buried any challengers this time around, like Bobby Kennedy, who found the dishonest Democrats so out of line he left the party to run as a third-party nominee so they could have Biden. And you have to wonder if this fires up Kennedy's run for president by disenfranchised Democrats that are not impressed with cackling Kamala. The whole nominating process ended less than 2 days after it began, when Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries both came out to throw their support behind the new standard bearer. Not exactly a crowd on fire with enthusiasm. In fact, it was really kind of silly. Chuck Schumer suddenly in line to push Kamala Harris to be president. Here he is.
So now that the process is played out, from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have to.
Yeah, nobody else was clapping either, Chuck. Here's something that might get their attention. BLM blasting the party as hypocrites. Blasting the party as hypocrites. BLM said timeline of events. This is on a Twitter post. They tweeted this out. Joe Biden drops out. Kamala Harris announces campaign. Kamala says she's going to work hard to earn the nomination. Harris calls party delegates for one day. She makes more calls. A 24-hour process of talking to party bosses is not democratic, and she gets the nomination. But there it is. There's Chuck Schumer asking for the applause, BLM rejecting it, and Chuck asking for it is a lot like Kamala asking for people to applaud during her events in the past. A tough crowd for sure, because Kamala Harris, look, she's going to get a bump in the polls. There's going to be this great fawning by the news media, but she's not a great candidate. But I can tell you for the next 105 days, she's going to be painted as the most consequential, most qualified, most transformational person ever to seek the office of President of the United States. She is the shining star of unity, which is pretty strange, considering pretty much nobody was allowed to weigh in on the so-called process, which was nothing more than a bloodless coup right out in front of all of us. We got to see this happen in 31 hours. After subverting democracy and giving the proverbial finger to the millions of voters, the Democrat Party claims that in just 2 days, they united the party behind a VP with lower approval numbers than Joe Biden himself. It's like magic. It is. Listen to this.
Democrats are moving forward stronger and more united than ever before. In just the last 36 hours, I have seen a surge of enthusiasm from every corner of our party, uniting behind Vice President Harris. An enthusiasm felt in every corner of the country, and it's contagious among Democrats. The volunteers, the small contributions, they're just pouring in ways even beyond our expectations. Now, we all know that Vice President Harris has a tremendous record to run on. And now begins the next chapter in our quest to make sure Donald Trump does not become president.
Yeah, that's their plan. And now the compliant left-wing media is pushing on a new approved talking point on one of Kamala's most vulnerable weaknesses, that as her role as border czar, something that obviously was a miserable failure. In fact, I speculated over the past couple of years that Harris was pushed into the role of border czar so she could be the sacrificial lamb. Take the blame for the massive affairs at the open border and take the heat off Joe Biden. Millions have flowed into the country illegally. Everybody knows it. She was in charge of it. What is the new talking point from the media and the Democrats? Well, despite the fact that it was said over and over again, they now claim Harris was never actually the border czar. No, really, this is what they're going with. That's why they're going in with a new campaign for Harris. On CNN, Dana Bash lied outright, saying Kamala Harris was not the border czar, and this is the beginning of what you're going to hear. Listen to this.
This is the kind of thing that is playing out all over conservative media. I just want to do a little bit of record correcting. There's not record crime right now. Number one, Harris was put in charge, as you said earlier, of combating the roots of immigration. She was not and is not the border czar.
And the Biden administration did task Vice President Kamala Harris with the issue of migrant crossings, naming her the so-called border czar.
I've asked her, the VP, today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks, stemming the migration to our southern border.
We've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
The point that you're making is you're a dishonest liar. March 24th, 2021, the AP reports Joe Biden has tapped Vice President Kamala Harris to lead the White House effort to tackle, they call it the migration, border challenges. Then yesterday, Kamala Harris was never Biden's border czar. Time magazine. No wonder these rags have no value. The problem is too many people lie. Too many people don't know. Make no mistake, though, the Trump campaign was ready for Kamala being pushed to replace the collapsing Joe Biden. I'll get back to Biden in a moment. And when I come back after the break, I want to show you those in MAGA country and what they think of Kamala Harris and their response. But she is dangerous. Make no mistake, they're going to prop her up as some sort of new coming, a new possibility. She's dangerous. Believe me when I tell you, she is dangerous. We'll talk more about this coming up. Stay with me here and also follow us on Twitter, on Truth Social, on Getter. And go to SteveGruber.com to keep up with everything else we do here. SteveGruber.com. Have you been there today? You should be. I'll be back.